Cultural silence and women harassment challenges across continents. Women harassment has always existed in different forms. Yet what makes it persist generation after generation is the cultural silence surrounding it. The silence is not just about the absence of speech. It is about how entire societies create invisible barriers that discourage women from speaking out. It is about how traditions, fear, shame, and misplaced notions of honor weave together to silence victims. Across continents, this silence manifests differently, but the outcome remains the same. Harassment thrives unchecked, women suffer in silence, and societies pretend the problem is smaller than it truly is. Imagine a young girl walking home from school in South Asia. She faces catcalls, unwanted touches, or constant stares, but when she tells her family, they tell her not to make a scene. They may even scold her for attracting attention, suggesting her clothes or her behavior invited harassment. Instead of support, she receives blame. Out of fear of further shame, she chooses silence. In another part of the world, a woman in an office in Europe deals with subtle harassment from her boss, comments on her appearance, inappropriate jokes, and unwanted messages. She considers reporting him but fears losing her career opportunities and being labeled as too sensitive or incapable of handling pressure. Again, silence prevails. These examples show how silence adapts itself to different cultures but always serves the same purpose: protecting the harasser and punishing the victim. In Africa, cultural silence often overlaps with traditions and economic inequalities. Many women are financially dependent on men, which makes it nearly impossible to confront harassment without risking survival. A woman may remain in an abusive workplace because she needs the income to feed her children. Another may remain silent within her marriage because her community expects her to endure and never question her husband. These silent sacrifices show how harassment becomes normalized when women are taught that their voices hold less value than their roles as caretakers or providers of honor. In North America, one might believe that stronger laws and global movements have solved the problem, but silence still finds its way into communities. Immigrant women, for example, often face a double layer of suppression. On one side, they fear losing their jobs or visas if they speak against harassment. On the other, cultural expectations from their home countries discourage them from bringing shame to their families. Even in industries like entertainment, sports, or domestic work, silence lingers because women know speaking up can mean blacklisting or retaliation. The Me Too movement opened floodgates of voices, but it also revealed how many years of silence had built up before women finally felt brave enough to share their truth. In South America, the cultural idea of machismo fuels harassment. Women who challenge harassment are often painted as troublemakers or accused of exaggerating. In some areas, women who dare to report abuse even receive threats of violence. When harassment is tied to deeply ingrained cultural attitudes about male dominance, silence becomes a form of survival. Many women weigh the risk of speaking out against the safety of staying silent, and silence often wins. The Middle East presents another complex picture. Many women live under strict social codes where speaking out is not only culturally frowned upon but also legally dangerous. A woman who accuses a man of harassment risks being blamed herself or even punished under morality laws. Families may discourage women from pursuing justice, fearing dishonor or community shame. In some cases, women turn to social media to share their experiences anonymously, creating digital spaces where their voices can exist without directly endangering them. Even so, the burden of silence remains heavy, proving how deeply cultural norms dictate what women can or cannot say. The impacts of cultural silence are far-reaching. On a personal level, it leaves women with deep emotional scars. They carry the weight of unspoken trauma, which manifests as anxiety, depression, or loss of confidence. Many begin to internalize the idea that their pain is insignificant or that harassment is simply part of life. On a societal level, silence creates a dangerous illusion that harassment is rare. Governments and institutions see fewer reports, assume the problem is small, and fail to invest resources into solutions. In workplaces, silence maintains toxic environments where harassers feel safe to continue their behavior because they know consequences are unlikely. On a broader scale, when women withdraw from unsafe spaces, economies lose talent, innovation, and productivity. Breaking this silence requires courage not only from women but from entire societies. Change begins when people choose to listen instead of dismissing, when families support rather than suppress, and when communities stand with victims instead of shaming them. Education plays a vital role here. When children are taught about respect, consent, and equality from a young age, they grow into adults who challenge old norms rather than blindly follow them. Schools and universities can become safe spaces where future generations learn that silence is not protection but complicity. Legal systems must also evolve. Stronger laws alone are not enough if victims do not trust the system. Governments must create environments where women feel safe to report, where investigations are fair, and where justice is swift. Countries that have made progress show us that when legal reforms are combined with public awareness, silence begins to weaken. In India, for example, workplace harassment laws were strengthened after survivors came together to demand change. In the United States, collective voices brought powerful figures to justice. In Africa, grassroots organizations are showing how local education can reshape entire communities. These changes highlight that silence, though powerful, is not invincible. Equally important is the role of media in global solidarity. Stories have the power to inspire, to remind women they are not alone, and to push societies into action. When films, news reports, and social media campaigns highlight harassment honestly and responsibly, they break down the walls of silence. Movements like Me Too spread across continents because women saw others speaking out and realized they could too. One voice became hundreds, then thousands, then millions. But while movements and laws matter, real transformation happens in daily life. It happens when a friend believes another friend's story instead of doubting her. It happens when a co-worker challenges an inappropriate joke in the office. It happens when families teach boys respect instead of entitlement. Every small act chips away at the culture of silence. Silence is strong because it is collective, but courage can also be collective, and when enough people choose courage, silence begins to crack. Women harassment may never disappear overnight, but the chains of cultural silence can be broken. Across continents, we see signs of change, women speaking out, men standing alongside them, communities beginning to question old beliefs. The journey is long, but it is possible. The responsibility does not lie only with women, it lies with everyone. Men must challenge toxic masculinity, leaders must create safer systems, and societies must value justice over tradition. In the end, silence is not neutral, it always favors the harasser. Choosing to stay quiet is choosing to allow injustice to continue. But choosing to speak, even if it feels small, is choosing to create change. Every voice matters, every story counts, and every act of courage inspires another. The silence that has weighed heavily on women for generations can be replaced by a culture of respect, equality, and safety. It begins with awareness, grows through solidarity, and becomes unshakable when entire societies decide that silence will no longer protect harassment, but will instead be broken for justice.